Hello and welcome to another edition of Taskmaster Talks with Kevin Sullivan. I am your host, JP John Poz from the two-man power trip of wrestling. And of course, joining me is the star of the show, the former ECW and WCW World Tag Team Champion, former NWA Florida World Heavyweight Champion, of course, one of the greatest minds and bookers ever in the history of the business, the Games Master, the Taskmaster, the devil himself, Mr. Kevin Sullivan. Kevin, how you doing today, sir?
I'm doing fine, JP. How you doing, my friend?
Not too bad. Can't complain. Doing okay. I feel like the wrestling world is trying to get back to normal, and I guess so is everybody else. Hopefully.
Well, what about now? St. Louis is being hit, right? Did you see that?
What was? No, I didn't see that. What was that?
The mandating masks in St. Louis.
Oh wow.
I mean, is this going to be, you think, a way of life for a while?
I am actually surprised that they didn't try to keep it in like California and Las Vegas or Nevada. Those kind of those more liberal places. I'm surprised they didn't try to keep it longer, but it looks like they're trying to bring it back.
Yeah. It's crazy, I don't know what this Delta thing is, and it's so confusing. They're saying people that have been taking the shots maybe have to take a third one. It's getting way out there.
Crazy. Yeah, the Delta variant. They're saying something else now is coming. Some other variant. I know they keep popping this stuff up. It's I'm a little suspicious at times, but it can be a little crazy too.
Yeah. And I think what it is it can make us crazy because, we forget history. When the Spanish flu hit, they were wearing masks playing baseball. Think about that.
Crazy. Yeah, outside.
Yeah, and that lasted over a year. So, I mean, I'm not sure if they had offshoots, mutations or not. But maybe even back then they didn't know about it. I think the more we know about science, it becomes. You got to realize too that they want to make money, so they want money for different vaccines and different things. I just hope that this is over quick. I don't want to see it coming back. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Ooh.
Yeah.
Brutal kind of getting through the first time. They can't bring it back for another time.
No.
And people aren't going to stand for it this time. First time around, they kind of stood for it long enough. And this time, I don't think they will.
I don't think they will either.
Because I already see a lot of resistance when people are like, oh, what about the mask? People are like, nope, that's over. I'm no more mask. Threw it out. Over and done with.
Yeah.
So as far as some current day wrestling stuff, obviously they're hitting the road again. They're doing a lot of live shows.
Mm-hmm.
Some attendance is great, some not so great. But overall, I think that it's at a fever pitch where people want to go back and see some live events.
Yeah, we were at 1,100 people in Lubbock.
Wow!
They just got on TV there about 4 weeks ago, so they did well.
Very good. Wow.
Really hot down there, it was really burning hot. I mean, it was like we started early because of the tapings and meet and greet started at 3:00. The heat of the day, it was probably, I don't know what the heat index was, but I know the temperature was 102.
Wow.
Yeah. So they did well.
It can get pretty damn hot down there. I know that.
Yeah.
Speaking of hot, WCW 1997 was very hot. I mean, you guys are at the top of your game. And today we're going to talk about Bash of the Beach 97. But what did you think kind of in that year? I mean, was that the high point of WCW as far as just being on a roll, literally taking out the WWF and just being number one for that full year? Obviously, and more, but really that full year.
Yeah, and here's the thing I don't think people understand. It's like pushing a snowball up a hill. It's really hard, but when you get to the top and it starts rolling, it takes a life of its own. So when you do make mistakes, you get away with them. It's when you're trying to push them up the hill is where you have the problem. But as Hogan once said to me, you can make mistakes, but not too many of them. Later on, we're going to see some mistakes being really made.
Definitely.
Yeah.
In 97, is there a definite Hogan camp? And then the other side of the spectrum, there's a Nash camp, and then there's a third camp, there's a Flair camp. Is that all kind of weaved into their own little separate categories?
Yeah, I mean, you can see it there. One of the things that Nash did that I always tell you how smart he is, Hogan had his own dressing room. A lot of guys had their own dressing rooms. But Kevin would dress with a lot of the Hispanic boys. So, his projection of being a regular guy came across to the guys underneath and in the middle.
Yep.
Yeah.
With the Hulkster, was the politics crazy right now backstage? I know he's got creative control and this and that, but I mean, you guys are on a roll. So is he more so with this, or is he laid back more?
He's laid back because it's rolling. You know what I mean? He ain't getting involved too much because, hey, I don't think we could have been doing much better. You know what I mean? You go into small towns like Des Moines and you draw $300,000. You're doing something.
Yeah, absolutely. Here at this point, obviously Hogan is the world champ. He's been champ for almost a full year at this point. He's just has money written all over him as far as the heel turn and the NWO. Is everything according to plan as far as booking wise of where you want him to be, where you want the NWO to be, where you want the title to be?
Yeah, right now. But now everybody seems to be happy because we're doing so well. Except you have some younger talent, and I don't blame them. It's funny, they bitch that the older guys on top are keeping them down. Now, some of those guys that were bitching are on top still. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
You get into a position where you're reluctant to sometimes do the right thing. So, because it's not an easy road, this wrestling is not an easy road. I actually heard Conan and Disco mention about pain. And they were saying every day they're in pain and they can't imagine not being in pain. Well, I can kind of relate to that with them. I mean, look at Hulk. He wasn't a bumpster, right? He didn't take a bunch of bumps. But dropping that leg, how many back operations has he had?
Yep.
I mean, so you're kind of reluctant to give up your spot, or you're reluctant to maybe give a rub unless you know someone really closely. It's a competitive business.
It's funny, like those guys they're saying, "Oh, the Hulk is too political." Once they get in that spot, they don't want to give it up. Like once you get to the top of the mountain, you love that money, right? You love that fame, notoriety, everything. You don't want to get down or knock down a peg or quote unquote lose your spot.
Right. And if and here's what I've always related to, John, for me anyway. And I have this thing that a psychiatrist should. We would make a great case study, wrestlers. You go 25 years using a different name, right?
Yep.
Do you get lost along the way?
Right.
So, it's just a difficult job. And once you get there, you certainly don't want to give it up because the lifestyle is so good. You know what I mean? So, and especially now where everybody's making money, and this is only like maybe 8 years. into contracts. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So some guys have been in the business never knowing, not having a contract. The guys on top at this time all work without contracts at one time or another.
They know what it was like the Hogans of the world know what it like when you got to get, live in a van or whatever, and no hotel and bologna sandwich. I mean, he knows that, and he never wants to be back there. That's for sure.
Right.
So today, the topic, Bash of the Beach 1997, which was held on July 13th, 97, from Daytona Beach, Florida, at the Ocean Center, your favorite venue. The attendance was 7,900 people. The tagline, Hulk Hogan and Dennis Rodman crash the Bash. Pay-per-view buys, 500,000.
Say that again. How many?
So the pay-per-view buys, 500,000 buys for the show. There was another article I was reading that was saying, it might have been closer to 350, but there was a lot of people, a lot of different articles I was reading said it was 500K on the buys. So, I mean, obviously that's got to do with Hogan, the NWO being hot, but also you got one of the biggest mainstream stars and the NBA champion, Dennis Rodman, in the main event. So, I mean, Rod the Bod is getting a ton of mainstream press. ESPN is all over it. All the sporting stations are all over us. Dennis Rodman is a huge draw in 97. And a year later, WWF would bring in Tyson. But this was kind of the precursor, like that controversial mainstream star being a huge part of the main event of your program, actually wrestling on the show.
Right. I thought Dennis was a very... he was very smart, and he's been to North Korea, right? Whereas when you go to airports, it says that's one of the places you can't go. And, he took a whole basketball team and gave them a payday.
Yep.
People don't understand. Wasn't he on 3 teams that won a world title?
3 in a row for the Bulls and 2 on the Pistons, 2 in a row. So he has 5 titles, and man, he's arguably one of the best defenders of all time, easily the greatest rebounder of all time. I mean, he was an unbelievable player.
Yeah, well, I would debate the greatest rebounder if we go back to Bill Russell.
I was going to say Bill Russell, yeah.
Yeah, but Dennis got 5 in a row, but Bill had 11 rings, so different time, different era. But
the 2 with the Pistons were the early 90s, and then it was 96, 97, 98 with the Bulls.
Right. And he was smart enough to know there was Michael, there was Scotty, Kerr, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So he really took on a persona with the hair, the earrings, dressing like a woman. I mean, come on. Everybody wanted to hear what he had to say.
Yep. Did you happen to see The Last Dance on the Bulls, that great 10-part documentary series that ESPN?
Yes, I didn't see it all, but I watched most of it, yeah.
Excellent stuff. They do talk about how he missed practice to go to wrestle for WCW.
Right.
And he thought that Jordan was going to be mad. And you watch the documentary, he comes in, and Jordan obviously watched WCW at this point, because how the hell else would he know that? He goes, "Hey, Rodzilla, where were you?" Like joking around with him. So even Jordan was watching WCW.
Yeah. And Jordan was a very good friend of Ric Flair's.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So, yeah. And the thing was, when Dennis came to the game, it was 100%. You know what I mean? He might have missed practice and things like that. But was it Allen Iverson? Practice.
Yep.
Practice.
Yeah, what are you talking about? Practice.
Yeah.
Man, he's talking about practice. Yes.
Yeah.
So Jordan knew, like, Rodman was, obviously a little crazy. He's got to do his own thing. Like, even they say in the documentary, they gave him a week off during the season. Like, what, a vacation during the season? Jordan's like, let him be. And when he comes back, he'll be fine. And obviously he was. They won 3 straight titles. The 96 team is the greatest team of all time. They went 72-10 and won the whole thing. I mean, man, he was such a big role and such a great role player on that team. And Jordan loved him. Phil Jackson loved him. Scottie Pippen appreciated him. Everyone loved Rodman. And the mainstream media absolutely loved this guy. I mean, he's showing up in dresses. He's sleeping with Madonna, Carmen
Yeah,
Electra, who was at that, even to this day, Carmen Electra's still amazing looking. But at that point, she's in her prime, and everyone's saying she's the hottest woman on the planet. He's
yeah,
marrying her and everything else. Crazy.
yeah, yeah. And he was a nice guy, with all the weirdness about him. I mean, I really enjoyed the little time I spent around Dennis. He was really down to earth. There was no bullshit like, hey, I'm Dennis Rodman from the Bulls. I need this, I need that. He was really easy to get along with.
Who brought him in? Hogan?
I believe Hogan, I think Rick had something to do with the two. They might have called Michael, but I'm sure Hulk made the call with Eric, and they got him. And hey, who wouldn't want to be on TV then with the NWO? The greatest faction. I don't care what anybody says. It's never going to be duplicated. It's like as you and I being baseball fans, right? Even after all these years, you look at the list of the greatest hitters of all times. It hasn't changed in at least 40 years, maybe 50. 1, 2, it's Ruth and Williams, you know what I mean? And we've seen Barry Bonds, we've seen Tony Gwynn, we've seen Pete Rose, but the guys that get there first are the ones that people remember.
No doubt about it. And the thing is with Rodman, well, the NWO is awesome, but the thing with Rodman is he kind of adds another kind of cool element to the NWO because he's like the cool celebrity. He's like the controversial celebrity, fits in absolutely perfectly with the NWO. Even the spray painting and stuff, I mean, he just fits in perfectly with that group.
Yeah. And the other thing about him fitting in perfectly is the younger people loved Dennis because he was fit in with them, right? But the hardcore older group hated him. You should play the game for the love of the game. Why are you spraying your hair, dressing like a woman with all those piercings, smoking cigars, missing practice? So he covered all the bases.
When he did miss practice, were you thinking, "Oh, this is awesome. This is money," because they're going to cover it. Like, where the hell is this guy? And then they're going to see him on TV. I mean, are you loving that? Because that's got to be awesome.
I actually was so shocked that Phil Jackson said, "No big deal." I was hoping they'd make a huge thing of it. You know what I mean? But everybody said that's Dennis. And you couldn't blame him. That next night, didn't he have like 17 offensive rebounds and he hit a 3?
Yes.
Yeah.
They show that in the documentary. That's so funny because they're like Jordan. I can't believe it's Jordan is like Rodman says he is scary. He's like the one guy he was scared of because he said he was so intense about like how you had to be perfect. He said he laughed and they show him joking around. He laughed and then he goes, "Oh, he's going to play good." He goes, "You better play good." And then they show him hitting the 3, the 17 rebounds, him doing the shrug. I mean, great stuff.
Yeah.
Gotta love Rod the Bod, the Worm.
Yeah.
Gotta love. Did you think that Slam Dunk was going to get a lot of mainstream media attention, just even having his name associated with WWE? Not even, let alone wrestling.
Yeah, because the NWO, I started to, that's when ESPN was hot. And I used to watch ESPN quite every day, like most sports.
Used to, yeah.
And you started to hear things. Oh, that's like the NWO. Let's look at this fight. This looks like an NWO gang up. So I'm saying, whoa, this is bigger than I thought.
Yeah. I just love the fact that he comes in, meshes in perfectly with the NWO. Because sometimes you bring in a celebrity and it's not that great. Like, for instance, we'll talk about that down the line, I'm sure, with Jay Leno, it's like, he gets some great appeal, but I don't know if that's a great choice. Like Rodman and Tyson, like those guys are perfect. You obviously don't like Leno. Yeah.
When I saw what, I was almost clairvoyant when he put the armbar on Hogan. I looked at J.J. Dillon and said, "That's going to be on every cover of every sports part of the newspaper." I was wrong. It was on the front page of the USA Today.
Hogan selling for him, yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
We'll definitely get into that at a later date, very, very, very soon here on the show. But man, Rodman is the perfect celebrity to me. Controversial, mainstream, is still in his prime, athletic, can wrestle a little bit. He won't embarrass himself, and he's 6'8", so I mean, he's not going to embarrass himself.
No, and he's playing for the greatest basketball team of all times.
Yeah. Yeah.
With the greatest basketball player of all times.
Nothing about it is bad. Yep.
No.
So the actual show, like I said, was very, very popular. You had a lot of sports fans tuning in for Rodman. 500,000 views or pay-per-view buys was huge. But the actual show, let's get it started with some results. Mortis and Wrath with James Vandenberg defeats Glacier and Ernest Miller. What do you think about starting off with this, Mortal Kombat-esque, like we talked about before, tag match? Although it's actually pretty good.
It was much better than I thought it was going to be. Some of those guys were saddled with bad gimmicks, but Wrath and Chronic, wasn't the name Chronic together, right? Didn't you say it was
Wrath and Mortis?
Mortis, okay.
This was the James Vandenberg group with the weird,
the weird mask. I didn't, it was something that was brought to the table, and it was, I think, somebody's idea, and they were trying to kind of mix into gaming and show business movies and trying to make, they knew it was going to be a big house, and they were fishing for something else besides wrestling.
What do you think about Ernest Miller? We don't really talk about him too much in the show. Obviously, Eric Bischoff's son, Garrett, his karate teacher, I guess. But, man, he's got obviously a legit background, legit tough-ass fighter who can knock people out easily in karate. He was a good kickboxer, too. I mean, he's just tough, bigger guy than you think. When I met him, I was like, man, he's bigger than I thought he was. But Ernest the Cat Miller, what do you think about him?
I think we should have presented him exactly what you just said, as a tough kick-ass guy rather than in that situation. First impression on a 500,000 baht show, maybe not the best for Ernest.
He's a legit shooter, tough guy. So it's funny. He's in with, like, I know the karate stuff with Glacier kind of makes sense and fits a little bit, but it's almost like he's so serious, and that gimmick is jokey, really. The Mortal Kombat stuff, it almost plays against Ernest the Cat Miller in a weird way.
I think it did too, but again, I think if you go, this is crazy how things go full circle. I just said they were looking for games or movies, right?
Yep.
I think the most successful wrestling movie ever made is The Wrestler.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Who did Mickey wrestle? Who did Mickey wrestle at the end of the movie?
Ooh, good point. Ernest the Cat Miller, yes. As the heel, the Sheik,
Yeah. So it kind of went full circle for Ernest.
Yeah, didn't even think about that. Wow, yeah, true. Good point. With Glacier, obviously blood runs cold. Everyone thinks it's probably something else. I mean, it got built up so much. What do you think about this gimmick and him? I mean, it's just too much buildup too, right?
Too much buildup, and Vandenberg always gives me shit about this every time I see him. He killed him on the interview when he said, glacier, a slow-moving block of ice. You remember that?
Yes, yes, yep.
You know that one, that sealed it to me. You know what I mean? He just told you. So, and he argues with me all the time. But James, if you're listening, sorry.
And Bischoff always says like, "Oh, Mortal Kombat was so big at the time. Glacier's kind of like Sub Zero or whatever, whatever Mortal Kombat Scorpion, whatever Mortal Kombat character you want to say." But he definitely doesn't fit in with the NWO reality. I know you always say it's like a buffet; you got to have different stuff, but
Yeah,
he doesn't fit in with where you guys are headed.
yeah, and that's why I say I think this was a fishing expedition, and he's done well for himself after wrestling and movies and
Yeah,
other
yeah.
things. So great for him. Ray's a wonderful person.
And obviously Mortis and Wrath do get to win in about 10 minutes, but Mortis, Chris Canyon, great
Yeah.
wrestler. Wrath, aka Adam Bomb, very, very good. He would always get like a good push and he'd lose to Goldberg, good push and he'd lose to Nash. Was he kind of that guy who wasn't going to get elevated to the top, but he was good enough to have these long winning streaks?
Yeah, there was something holding him back, and I don't think it was him. You know, it's
Hmm.
a very, very competitive business, and sometimes it's very cliquish. And he was a workman that came and did his job, but there was, I'm not going to say that he was aloof or anything, but he, he was, hey, this was his job and he wanted to do it right. And I have a lot of respect for Brian. He always looked wonderful, and he just was a guy that got caught in a role that was his position to get guys ready. A winning streak and then get guys ready for the next guy. So
Yep.
that's a bad position to be caught in.
And with him too, you don't see too many guys that are 6'6", 6'7" that could fly and come off the top rope and be agile too. Which I
Right.
just thought, like, man, there's something about him that sets him apart. But like you said, you're right. Maybe something backstage might have been holding him back from getting a bigger push.
Right.
Next up is a cruiserweight championship match, and it's Chris Jericho defending his title against Ultimo Dragon. Jericho ultimately gets the win here in 13 minutes. What do you think here? I mean, this is great. This maybe or could have been maybe the opener if you switched to maybe
Yeah.
put this on first, right?
Yeah. I thought, this was just my line of thinking, you put that on first, the second match, the people aren't going to. It's like that match was on first because I knew there was a fishing expedition. It was like, okay, keep your eyes closed. Don't worry. The second match is going to be different. And it was. It was probably technically the best match on the card.
Right.
Ultimate Dragon was incredible. And I think, as great as Chris Jericho is, one of my favorite runs he ever had was the Cruiserweight Champion.
Yep, me too. So good. Obviously, the Malenko feud was great. Juventud feud, the Rey Mysterio match here against Ultimo Dragon's awesome. What's interesting here is the finish. So Ultimo Dragon goes for a Hurricane Rana, and Jericho kind of reverses it into a roll up. So does that keep Dragon strong, but also kind of makes Jericho look, well, he's just a cagey veteran heel. He's just sneaky there.
Yeah, and they worked that finish out, and that was Jericho's. Jericho would be somewhat sometimes a chicken shit heel, but the announcers could always say he was innovative wrestler, and he passed himself off as the cruiserweight champion who could wrestle.
Right.
Yeah.
Very good match here, obviously, with those two, and you kind of knew that going in. The next match, very interesting matchup here. The Steiner brothers, Rick and Scott, defeat the Great Muta and Masahiro Chono in about 11 minutes and 30 seconds. What do you think here? The Steiner brothers win, thus earning a WCW World Tag Team title shot.
Yeah, because this is going back to Japan too. The Steiners work in Japan with these two guys. So this was going back to the Japanese lost in the USA, but they would win in Japan.
The big thing here was the finish. Rick hits Muta with the top rope DDT, which is a very dangerous move. Steiner brothers, man, when they deliver this, it just looks vicious. Probably hurts a little bit too, but man, a top rope DDT is always an effective finish. But I love when the Steiner brothers did that.
Yeah, I did too. But like you said, it's very dangerous. And only because they were so strong could they pull it off.
Yep.
It never hurt anybody.
What do you think here as the Steiner brothers are kind of being the number one contenders to the tag titles again? You thinking got to keep the tag division strong? Obviously, you got the Outsiders, you got Harlem Heat, you got a bunch of teams. Keep that division strong?
Yeah, but we also, that match went right to Japan, and I'm sure it was edited, to make the Japanese, there was things taking the Steiners belts and the Japanese around that were taken out, you know what I mean?
Yep. And the Steiners were just as over in Japan as they were in the States, and that's a huge accomplishment.
It's a huge accomplishment. I spent a lot of time in Japan. It's a huge accomplishment.
There was at one point when you guys were bringing them back in basically 96 where they almost didn't want to come back because they were making so much money over there, and they were headlining shows.
Right.
So the next matchup, your favorite, Juventud Guerrera, Hector Garza, and Liz Mark Jr. defeat La Parca, Psychosis, and Villano 4 in a 6-man tag in about 10 minutes. Man, all 6 of those guys are great. The Cruiserweight division is great, but the Lucha Libre guys from the Cruiserweight division is what always stood out to me. This match, a little bit of a cluster, but it's kind of what you expect, but you like it. I mean, it's not too crazy, but they do a lot of crazy high spots and innovative moves.
Yeah, it's something that you haven't seen before. I think the younger children went crazy over it. And it was, and they were just so good. The luchadors really, they're some of the unsung heroes of WCW.
Big time. I almost feel like they're underappreciated in that aspect because so many fans would say, "Oh, the luchadors were the best," and I turned it on to watch Ray or Hoovy or even the Villano or something like that. Always kept people's interest and kept them from clicking to the WWF.
Right, La Parca.
Yes.
Yeah. Chairman of the board.
Yes, love him. The finish here was when Villano 5 attempted to replace Villano 4 in the match. He was immediately hit with a springboard, a drop kick into a standing moonsault by Hector Garza, and he pinned actually Villano 5 for the win. A little bit of trickery here, a little bit of chicanery, but the heels get outsmarted by Garza, who is the babyface in this match. Always saw a lot of potential in him at this point. I know he had his demons and he had his problems, but he was very athletic, but also not a small guy. Not your traditional small luchador at all.
Yeah, he looked very good. Very good.
Any of these guys stick out to you as far as like getting a push? Would Hoovy be kind of the guy that you're saying out of all of them? Like,
yeah,
he's probably or
Hoovy just had a certain look. You know what I mean? He looked like Geronimo to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He just looked in his work was just second to Ray's, and I knew that match would always steal the show. So I always tried to keep him as strong as I could.
Absolutely. The next match up is your retirement match. If you want to go back in the archives, we cover this even more extensively as we have our Chris Benoit episode. Just go back in the archives, type in Taskmaster Talks, Chris Benoit, and you'll see a whole thing there. But in this match, Chris Benoit defeats you with Jacqueline and Jimmy Hart in the retirement match in 13 minutes. Man, this is a barn burner to say the least. You're going out on your shield here, to say the least. I mean, you're taking some crazy bumps.
Yeah. And we did the Tyson Holyfield. I had Chris bite my ear.
Yes.
Holyfield was 2 weeks before that.
Yep.
Then I took that belly to back suplex off the top. So, yeah, but he deserved it. I was fixing to make him the world champion in my mind sometime down the line.
You and Jacqueline get a little bit into it. She hits you over the head with the wooden chair. It explodes. Then Benoit hits the flying headbutt. 1, 2, 3. He picks up the victory here. This is a huge thing. So when you put somebody over, okay, put them over. When you put them over in a retirement match, I mean, that's like the ultimate, no?
Yeah, and the other thing is, you better do it clean. You know what I mean? No chicanery. Just do it clean. And that's the way I've always looked at this. You want the guy, hey, if I'm not going to be wrestling anymore, I want to make him, I don't want to just go in the ring and make him, he just slipped over. I want him to be dominant.
What did you think here, like why you want to retire? You had enough injuries, or was it a bunch of different things together?
Well, it was hard to be getting ready to put on your boots when you were in conversations and running around. It was just too much.
Booking and wrestling the show, you mean?
Yeah, it was too much. I really had slowed down going to house shows, wrestling, and it just became too much. So it was the right thing to do. It's time to get up.
Was Benoit always the guy that's going to end the career? Was that always the thought?
No, but when we got into the matches, I saw that he was the rising star. And he needed, in my head, something to put on a notch's gun. And I also did it for Jacqueline, too, because later on, she kept on going and got tougher and tougher.
With this and Benoit winning and retirement here, is the thought for you like, okay, I'm going to be a manager, or I'm going to try to step away completely?
I was going to try to step away completely because, like I said, if you're involved in the match, you have, as Bob Dylan's song says, you got to serve somebody. You can't serve two masters. So it was time to go the other way.
When Benoit wins this match, how are you feeling physically afterwards? Because it's been a year-long, basically, feud where you guys beat the hell out of each other for a year. I mean, awesome feud. One of the best.
Physically, I felt good, except my joints were starting to come to a problem, and I had been having a neck problem for a couple of years. So I was glad it were away to let it go. And my elbows were gone at that time.
Yep. The next match up is Jeff Jarrett defending his WCW United States Championship against Steve Mongo McMichael with Queen Deborah, the beautiful Queen Deborah. Jeff Jarrett gets the win here in 7 minutes. Interesting part here is that Deborah McMichael is kind of turning on Steve in this match. Hands Jarrett a briefcase. She kind of distracts the ref, so Jarrett can use the briefcase as a weapon on Steve. Jarrett ends up picking up the victory, obviously, and he leaves with a celebration with Deborah. So kind of really teasing something with Jarrett and Deborah, and Mongo being kind of the odd man out.
Right. I mean, I'd like to just send my heartfelt wishes to Mongo, a nicer guy I never met. I'm sorry that he's going through this, but it was the right thing to do. Jeff is a second-generation wrestler. He drew money. Mongo was very good in the role he played, but he wasn't a Jeff Jarrett.
With Jeff, obviously, he's the United States Championship, second biggest title in the promotion. Is he destined for a bigger role here at this point? Because eventually, he's not too long after this is going to head back to the WWF.
In my mind, no. He wasn't going to become the world champion, no. That was locked with the NWO or
Would
Sting.
What'd you think about the pairing with Deborah? Because obviously WWF copies it and they do it again. So you
Yeah,
must have some sort of good chemistry with him.
it was good. It was good. And then, like you said, the WWEF at the time did it again, so it must have worked.
Did you care for Jarrett's attire at that point?
No, it was too southern. You know what I mean? That was just me. I know there's huge country and westerns stars and huge country and western concerts, but now it's kind of crossed over. But during this time, it was still a southern thing, country music. You know what I mean?
Big time. I feel like though that I don't know, was it for Heat maybe the outfit? Because it didn't scream main event, or even though I loved him at this point, it just didn't scream main event. Like what the hell kind of attire is this?
I never understood it, to tell you the truth. And like I said, that was a southern look to me. You know what I mean? I hate to say it, and I'm going to get heat over it. That was a Memphis look.
Yeah. Yep.
You know.
The thing is, too, the undercard you guys have at this point, you got Jericho, Benoit, Jarrett, just to name just those three. But I mean, they're on the undercard. It's a pretty damn impressive undercard. No wonder you're killing WWF at this point. You know, you got these guys working on the undercard.
And Hoovy and Ultimate Dragon and Chris Jericho.
Crazy.
Yeah.
It's WCW is so loaded in 97, it's ridiculous. But the next match up, Scott Hall and Randy Savage with Miss Elizabeth of the NWO defeat Diamond Dallas Page and his mystery partner, Curt Hennig, with Kimberly in about 9 minutes and 30 seconds. What do you think here? Another WWF guy kind of coming over. You guys, which was the big kind of surprise for you guys. You guys get Curt Hennig in WCW.
I have a theory about why Curt Hennig didn't become a bigger star than he is.
Mm-hmm.
That outfit he wore. We're talking about outfits?
Yep.
Curt had a magnificent wrestler of his body. That singlet didn't help him.
Interesting.
That's just my take on it. I never liked it because nobody took bumps like Curt. Curt was one of the greatest workers I've ever seen. And I just, if you looked at something, it was one of those things, what doesn't belong? It was that outfit. To me, that stood out just like Jarrett's outfit.
I always like when he took the arms down on the singlet.
Yeah. And you could see his body.
Oh, it's huge. Yeah.
Yeah.
When you guys get him, is that a Bischoff thing? Bringing him over?
I think it was, I mean, if Curt Hennig comes available, everybody wants him. Like I said, he's one of the greatest workers of all times. You
almost think you have too many top stars because, like we just mentioned, it's Hall and Savage, and then you got DDP. Then you throw, Hogan, Luger, the Giant, Piper, Flair. You got all these guys. You think it's almost like an embarrassment of riches? You bring in Mr. Perfect?
I think Eddie Graham once said to me, bring in the best talent you can because the cream will rise to the top.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Because in this match, I think it was great because at this point you're in a war. You add another surprise. The fans are loving it. I mean, it's just like as a fan, you're like, wow, it's so spoiled right now. You get the NWO surprises now. Curt Hennig is a surprise. I mean, WCW is even more loaded than ever. So during this match, towards the end, Hennig is running towards the rope. Page accidentally held down the ropes, causing Hennig to fall to the outside of the ring, hitting at the apron on the way down to the floor. Hennig then got up, hit Page in the back of the head before leaving ringside for the remainder of the match. This enabled Hall to hit the outsider's edge on DDP, followed by a Savage elbow drop for the 1-2-3 victory for Hall and the Macho Man, causing dissension here. So immediately you kind of have the Page Savage feud, but you also throw in the tension now of Hennig, who he's going to have a little bit of a side feud with here with Page, because he just cost him the match.
Right.
What's the thought process here? Is this making Page a bigger star by having him feud with two of the biggest names?
Yeah, and Kurt is a better heel than he is babyface. You know, he's Mr. Perfect. So I think Kurt, as good a babyface Kurt was, I thought he was twice as good as a heel. And like I said, they had seen him as Mr. Perfect and had all kinds of heat. Doesn't make sense to make him a babyface, in my estimation.
When you bring him in and he's, the mystery guy, surprise guy for DDP at this point, is the thought process that you're going to make him NWO eventually, or is this just he's going to be a heel and it's going to be WCW, but he's going to be a heel within WCW?
The thought process is right now is he's going to be in WCW, but the way it worked out, the famous parody he was actually part of, right? It just flowed into that.
Yeah, I mean, when he first gets there, obviously he's embroiled in some damn good feuds with DDP, and then that one with Rick, which gets real personal real quick. I mean, it's definitely some good stuff there. Maybe physically he looks great, but he's not in his prime because he does have that back injury and has that knee injury, so he's not 100% the Mr. Perfect that we know and love, who's feuding with Bret Hart for all those years.
Right. But I'd still take an injured Curt Hennig over 100% healthy somebody else. You got a chance to get Curt Hennig, you get Curt Hennig.
Yep. Man, there's so many big names in WWE at this point. It's just crazy. It's like, what? Let's just throw Curt Hennig. Eventually, Raven gets thrown into the mix, obviously, as well here in 97. Right. But it's like, man, it's you guys are just rocking and rolling. Are you ever fearful, or you don't even think about payroll and budget and that kind of stuff?
They don't.
No,
that isn't my thing. I don't even know what most of the guys are making. I have an idea what some of, but no.
So the next match here, as we've been talking about for the last few weeks, Roddy Piper and Ric Flair have this kind of feud building for months here, and it keeps building and building. Finally, it's coming to somewhat of a crescendo as Roddy Piper defeats Ric Flair by technical submission in about 13 minutes here. Does it by the submission during the match. Both Benoit and McMichael attempt to interfere on Rick's behalf before both being ejected by referee Mark Curtis. Piper ultimately picks up the win with the sleeper hold. What do you think here as far as Pipe going over Nate?
They were so dear friends. Nate wanted to do that to get Piper back over. They're very, very, very close. And that was Rick's, what can I do for you, Roddy? So there was some pleasant times that guys were way unselfish.
Did you like a separate feud with two huge names away from the NWO? Was that something good?
Yeah,
or you think
I think
it took away from the NWO at all?
No, I don't think it took away from the NWO. I don't think it could have taken away from the NWO until you started passing out shirts.
Now, did Piper ever give you any hard time? Obviously, he's going over here, but did he ever give you a hard time like, hey, I got to win, or you got to keep me strong, stuff like that?
I never had 1 ounce of question from Roddy Piper. Never.
And like you said, him and Nature boys, right?
Yep.
Best friends almost, right? I mean, they're super close.
Oh, they're super close. I mean, the famous party, Lewin against Piper at Rick's house. I mean, I was there.
Did Lewin go over?
Well, Rick says Piper went over. I say Lewin went over, but both of them were in sad shape, I'm sure, the next day.
Lewin was like legit crazy, wasn't he? A little bit, or is that more gimmick than real?
That's more gimmick. He's very brilliant. Very brilliant. He's very smart. He taught me a lot about the wrestling business. I mean, when he was 16 years old, he was Argentina's Rockers tag team partner. made $123,000. I think it was in 1955.
Wow. Wow, pretty impressive. Damn. Where is he today? Where is Lewin?
Lewin is in Singapore, and he's on an island up here in the Great Northwest. But he spends most of the time in Singapore. His wife is in, the royal family of Singaporeans. Yeah.
We might have to get him on because
Yeah.
nobody's interviewed him in a long time. We might have to get him on. Yeah.
Yeah.
So next up is the main event of the evening. The total package, Lex Luger and the Giant defeat Hollywood Hulk Hogan and Dennis Rodman with the Macho Man at ringside by torture rack by submission in 22 minutes. What do you think here? I mean, was everything built up right? Rodman does the arm drag, which gets played everywhere. ESPN every hour was playing it. They were really pumping this up. You saw on the bottom of the screen, Lex Luger and the Giant defeat Hogan and Rodman. I mean, what do you think here?
I think it showed in my head that you just couldn't walk in and beat out two guys. I think it helped WCW kind of give them a little boost. As Dusty would say, as you will.
Yep.
It gave them a boost.
With this, Rodman doesn't lose. Hogan loses to the torch rack here.
Right.
So you're building up Luger Hogan, which is awesome because the crowd is dying for it. And Luger is so over. It's like ridiculous as a babyface. Maybe Vince should have took some notes here on how to get Luger over as a babyface because he couldn't do it.
No. Lex, the role he played with Sting, where he was good guy, bad guy, was the best role he ever played. Lex Luger was a phenomenon. I mean, he never worked on the opening matches from the day he got into the business. He was on top. Fabulous performer.
Did you have any thought of Hogan and Rodman going over, or like you said, you can't have a non wrestler, an athlete come in and beat your guy?
No. And I think everybody thought that because of Rodman, they would go over. I think it helped the company where they didn't, and especially with Hogan getting beaten the rack.
The thing here is you're eventually going to have Luger beat Hogan in a few weeks after this for the title. Is this all kind of leading up to that too? You really want to get Luger over as strong as possible before he beats Hulk?
Right. And that was Hulk's idea.
Really?
Yep.
So Luger, I interviewed him years ago, but he said Hulk's idea. And I'm thinking, he's just trying to be nice. Hogan really wants to get Luger over, huh?
Yes, he does. Yeah.
Because he beats him here at the show, here at the pay-per-view. Then he beats him on the Nitro. And then when Hogan gets the win back, he cheats. He has Nash as the fake Sting. And, he's the heel, but he cheats to beat Luger. So Luger never looked weak in the process.
Right. I mean, Hogan knew talent. I mean, he definitely knew that, and he respected Luger's hard work. Maybe Lex wasn't the greatest in the ring, but he looked as good as anybody in the business at the time. So Hogan respected that, as most guys with any brains would.
With Luger, did him and Hogan get along very well backstage?
Very well.
For some reason, it just doesn't seem like they'd be in two different cliques. He'd be in like the Sting clique and whatever.
Yeah. No, they got along well.
As far as Dennis Rodman is concerned, are your thoughts of like, okay, when can we have him back? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's so successful, you got to want him back, right?
Yeah, of course. I'm thinking, well, we didn't beat Dennis, so maybe he can say something off the cuff by mistake. Well, they didn't beat me, Hulkster. So, and just having Dennis around was a pleasure.
With Dennis, obviously, He's just such a huge star here. You'll end up bringing him back Bash Beach 98. He'll be at Road Wild 99. Is he expensive, or is that not even your category? You don't really know, but I would imagine he'd be pretty expensive.
That's not my category, but if he drew 500,000 buys, he was worth every penny. That's the way I look at it.
And Hogan gets a piece of that, right?
Yeah, and the other thing is, like you said, ESPN, they were playing it every hour on the hour. We then had surged ahead, so he was worth it.
No doubt about it. I mean, WCW at this point was great. What do you think overall in the pay-per-view? Thumbs up, thumbs down?
I say thumbs up. Hogan losing in the rack, Ultimate Dragon, the Luchador match.
Benoit ending your career?
Yeah, and Curt Hennig appearing as the mystery partner. The Steiners beating the Japanese, and that's going back to Japan. I think a lot of things got accomplished.
Very good show. I got to give it a thumbs up for sure. I really, really liked it. Just look at it like when you go back and go back, like, man, every match had some sort of just huge star or some sort of implication. And that's why WCW, I mean, kicking ass right here and really kicking it into gear and really at all pumping up on all cylinders, just dominating.
Yeah, we were.
So the next thing that will happen in WCW, obviously, we said Hogan is going to defend the title, and we're going to go on from there. We're going to still build up for Sting. In your mind, booking wise, where are you headed? Are you thinking, okay, Luger's short term, we're going to get him over, but long term, it's really kind of leading up to Sting Hogan?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that is the ultimate match. That's like Flair's Sting when it was first done, way back in the Clash of Champions. That's what I saw in my head.
Now let's head to the plugs. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at 2Man Power Trip. Check out the website, tmptempire.com. And of course, you can follow Kevin on Instagram at Taskmaster Talks. Go to Pro Wrestling Tees, prowrestlingtees.com, and visit the Kevin Sullivan store. Get some great stuff over there. Kevin, what else you got going on?
Well, I just got back from Texas, like I mentioned to you off camera. They did Fury. AEW Fury did AEW Fury. Yeah.
SWE.
Yeah, Fury. Did 1,100 people, first time in Waco, Texas. So things are going good. I'm going to be there in 2 weeks. So I got 2 weeks off to go crabbing and fishing. So I'm going to enjoy my 2 weeks. We got beautiful weather.
Nice. It's funny. I never went fishing too much, but I used to go crabbing all the time because a good buddy of mine, his family had a house down in LBI, Long Beach Island. We used to go crabbing, literally sit on the dock. We would crab all day and night. We'd have our wrestling figures out there. We'd have all this stuff. We would go crab. We loved it. And then his grandmother would cook the crabs. It was awesome.
Yeah. Well, we got the Dungeness crabs, the ones that weigh like 3-4 pounds, you know.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Long Beach Island has some great crabs, some great seafood for sure. Some of the best.
Yep.
I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in this week for Taskmaster Talks. We'll see you right back here next week, folks. Have a good one.